I'm George Berry. This is our 7th lesson of SAWD, the Southern Academy of Woodworking and Environmental Design. This time I want to cover man-made boards. We've already covered all the trees, all the wood that we work with, but there are several man-made boards. The first being Masonite. This is Masonite. It was discovered in the 50s by Mr. Mason. I believe he was working for 3M paper manufacturing, and he was making thick paper. And he sort of left, they were working with a heated press. And he sort of left the press on when he went to lunch, and when he came back, he had cooked a thick piece of paper into something that looked like what is now Masonite. Masonite in America has a slick side and a screen side. This side is really textured so that the glue is able to grip when you're gluing something to Masonite. So they call this, woodworkers call this surface has tooth. So it has ability to hold the glue and bite into the glue. This side is what people usually use. This originally was used for cabinet backs and drawer bottoms, and a lot of fine art painters will paint directly onto Masonite. So this is one of the first man-made boards that showed up in America. The second man-made board that came in to the craft is particle board. Somebody got the bright idea one day, why don't we just glue sawdust together? Because sawmills usually wind up with mountains and piles of sawdust. So this is little more than sawdust glued together. So this is called particle board. If you can see, they're little fine particles, a little bit finer than the particles of Masonite. But this is nothing but wood dust and glue. Now, when I first started woodworking, I thought, particle board is nothing but a cheap way for industry to lower their production cost on furniture. And it was. But this particle board does have an advantage in that it doesn't move much. The expansion and contraction of particle board due to moisture changes in the air or humidity, relative humidity, or actually absolute humidity, but it doesn't move much. So you can get away with doing things in particle board that you can't do in real wood, because real wood's going to expand and contract with changes in humidity, but this does not. Unfortunately, it doesn't extrapolate into liquid water. Liquid water will ruin this stuff. If liquid water gets on it, it will swell up, and then it won't go back when it dries out. So it just stays swollen. So liquid water is no good on this stuff. You can't use it in places in a bathroom or close to a swimming pool or outside, because water is going to ruin it. But if you don't get it wet, this stuff is very stable. And it's also heavy, because a lot of this weight of the board is glue and not wood. And unfortunately, the average person, when they're in a furniture store, judges the quality of furniture by weight alone. So they would say, ooh, this coffee table is heavy, it must be well made, it must be strong. But it's not true. It's just a lot of particle board in it. So particle board was the next thing. Now, because it doesn't expand and contract with changes in humidity, in some applications, particle board is superior to wood. Take, for example, panels on the wall of an elevator. Now that elevator, let's say it's going up and down in a 10-story building. Because if it was a real high building, like, 40 floors, 50 floors, there'd be different banks, and one elevator wouldn't go from the basement to the penthouse. You'd have different banks, different levels. But in a normal 12-story building, let's say, one elevator would go from the basement to the penthouse, to the roof. Now, there are different conditions. The top of the elevator shaft at the penthouse or at the roof is very hot and very dry. And then it goes all the way down to the basement, which is very cold and very warm and very wet. So these changes in humidity happen in an elevator all the time, many times a day. And if you don't have a very stable panel in that elevator, that panel is going to warp and give you all sorts of problems. So particle board as a core for wooden elevator panels is superior to solid wood core. So the next man-made board is plywood. Now, plywood came into existence right after World War II. World War II ended in 1945, and when the war was over, all the GIs came back home. So by 46, 47, they were all home. And they needed to make houses quickly. Returning GIs could get married and repopulate from all the people who lost their lives in World War II. So they did two things. They invented stick framing, which is 2x4s. Before that, it was post and beam. The whole structure stood out by itself, post and beam, and you just filled in the walls later. That's the way they still do it in Europe a lot. But we invented balloon framing because the house seemed to go up so fast it looked like you were blowing up a balloon. You just put 2x4s on 16-inch centers. They did 16-inch centers because plywood was just being born, and plywood was 4 foot by 8 foot. So a 16-inch center meant that would be 4 foot wide, and they would break right on, the plywood would break right on a 2x4 seam. So that's when plywood was invented. And in fact, I like to say plywood and me have the same birthday because I was born in 46. What makes plywood plywood is there's a one layer of thin veneer going one way, and the layer underneath that is going the opposite way. You remember, we have short grain is very bad. Wood is very weak against its grain. So to make plywood strong, one layer of the grain goes that way. The layer right underneath it, called the cross band, is going the opposite direction. And then the layer under that's going the face grain direction, and the cross band underneath that one is going across this way. Then a layer going this way, and then a layer going that way. If you can see the edge, you can see how those layers are going in different directions. One's in grain, one's edge grain. One's in grain, one's edge grain. That might be a little easier to see, a little darker. But that's what makes plywood plywood. One layer of the veneer goes one way, and the layer beneath it goes exactly the opposite. If they were all going in the same direction, it would be short grain. You would be able to break it, not as easy as solid wood in short grain because there's a glue layer in there. But if it was all going in the same direction, it wouldn't be plywood. It would be laminated board. So plywood is what most cabinets and fine furniture is made out of these days. So plywood is the next stage in man-made boards. Plywood is probably half the price of solid wood. And when you get down in thin boards, like 1/4 of an inch, well, 1/4 of an inch solid wood, like you would put in a drawer bottom or a cabinet back, would not be nearly as strong as 1/4 of an inch plywood, which 1/4 of an inch plywood and 1/4 of an inch drawer bottoms are superior to solid wood bottoms. So plywood comes into play, is better in thin stocks. Now we got the particle board, and particle board, to make furniture even cheaper, can come with melamine on the surface. Melamine is the last coat of Formica. So this is not really stained wood. This is actually paper with a photograph of wood printed on it and a clear piece of plastic pressed on the top of that. Very thin plastic called melamine. So here's your particle board on the inside, on the core of this is the particle board. But on the surface is a very thin, paper-thin layer of a photograph of wood with the melamine on the top of it. So this looks like stained cherry, but you see on the edge, it's all particle board. So if you veneer the edge of this with a melamine tape, then it's pretty hard for the average person to tell that this is not real wood. This is much cheaper than particle board, much cheaper than plywood, because the finish is already on here. So after you build a cabinet out of this stuff and you veneer the edges, you don't have to sand it, you don't have to finish it, you don't have to stain it, it's all done. So this is the way most kitchen cabinets are made in America now. MCP panel, melamine component panel is what this is called. This comes in white and almond, and which is a little darker than white, off-white, and that's really the inside of half the cabinets in America made today are covered in white MCP panel. This is another man-made board that's come about in the last decade and a half or 2 decades. This is much finer particles than particle board, much finer. This is almost a paper making process. The wood is ground up very fine, like thick shirt cardboard. But you see, the edge, it's all MDF, medium density fiberboard, abbreviated MDF. If you go to a cabinet shop in Atlanta, I'll bet you that half of the stuff they make is MDF. This is very popular now. It's replaced particle board for almost all uses, and MDF is extremely used in cabinet making. It's, you know, kind of upsets the woodworker in me to see a lot of this stuff done. Liquid water swells it up and it won't go back, so it's not good for liquid water. Certainly you make anything out of this, it's not dishwasher safe, and you can't put anything in the rain. It just swells up. But if you're going to make a box and cover it in Formica, then this is easy, inexpensive way to do it. It comes in different sizes too. This is 1/4 inch MDF. And can be used where 1/4 inch plywood can be used. It doesn't expand and contract very much with changes in humidity, but liquid water will ruin it. So you take MDF and you put a surface on it that's real wood, not a photograph of wood printed on paper with a clear plastic melamine on top of it. This is maple plywood. This is real birch veneer. It's not plywood because there's no core stock, no cross band. This is all MDF on the core stock, all on the inside, and it looks like maple on the outside. So if you put a solid piece of, well, if you put a piece of veneer right here of solid maple, then it's very hard to tell that this is not a maple board. So you can make cabinets out of this and veneer the edge, and it looks like it's solid maple. But it's about 40% of the cost of solid wood. And it won't expand and contract with changes in humidity, but it's no good for liquid water. Here is a cherry plywood. This is cherry, and you can see that it has a core stock, a uniform laminate core stock. Every layer is the same thickness. One up this way, one that way, one this way. So that's cherry. Here's another man-made board called Oriented Strand Board, OSB. This is sold a lot in big box stores now. This is the way they make houses in the United States now. This is the skin on the house. This is much cheaper than plywood. put the 2x4s up and then nail this to it. It makes it good and strong. The orientation is all the chips of wood are going this way. Big chips of wood, as you can see, are going this way. In the center, they're going that way, and on the back side, they're going that way. So it's oriented strand board. This is called medium density overlay. This is plywood, different layers of plywood. It has MDF, medium density fiberboard, in a thin 1/16 of an inch layer right on the surface, and then it's primed white. This is good for sign painters. And if you're going to paint a cabinet, then this would be a good panel for a cabinet. This is 1/4 inch plywood. I have two here. You see how the grain's going in different directions? But it's plywood. It's very strong, good for backs and drawer bottoms, but the grain direction does make a small difference in that this would break a lot easier than this one will because of the difference of the grain. But usually plywood is considered to have an omni-grain. You don't have to worry too much about grain direction with plywood. All right, that covers most of the plywood. Here's another piece of mahogany plywood, but this is Luan is a mahogany, used to grow a lot in the Philippines. In fact, it was called Philippine mahogany. But this is bendable plywood. This is called bending Luan. So this will actually bend. You take two pieces of this, put glue in between them, put them together, and bend them around the mold, and, you know, come back in 2 hours, and they'll hold that bend. So this is an easy way to take the hard edge out of plywood furniture. Plywood furniture is always square-edged and boxy looking, but you get some of this stuff, bending Luan plywood, and you can bend the heck out of it. You can cover anything that you make in Formica. See, Formica is a man-made board. It's a man-made surface. So it's actually thin pieces of paper. Paper is a wood product. Paper's all wood. Formica has paper that is impregnated with phenolic resin plastic. And you put 5 or 6 layers of paper together with phenolic plastic impregnated, and you bond it under a press, and you get a nice surface like that. Could look like wood, could look black, any color. They have thousands of colors. And the backside has rough surface so that the glue will stick to it and so it can be put down. Now this is Formica, like you'd put on a piece of plywood, but you can get this same Formica. They pretty much look the same from the back, but you can get this Formica with real wood on the face of it. So you could put glue on here, put it down, and this looks like ribbon stripe mahogany, but it's actually Formica. There are other boards that are made out of anything organic that you can press into a board. This is actually made out of carpet fibers, recycled carpet fibers. It's called Nilo board. It's supposed to be impervious to liquid, so it won't expand and contract to changes in humidity, and liquid water will not hurt it. You could use this for the floor of a trailer or a lot in the boat industry. We've had these before. See, this is man-made Macassar ebony, and this is real Macassar ebony. They look just about alike. This is only 1/5 the cost. When you're doing a lot of Formica work, you get that black line of the thickness of the Formica. And so some boards like this, you can order, see this edge wraps around, all the way around. That's Formica that wraps around. Formica in America comes in 3 thicknesses. A 1/16 of an inch, which is countertop, called standard grade. A 1/20th of an inch, which is made to bend, be heated up and bend around. That's a 1/20th. And 32nd of an inch, which is made to go on the walls. That covers a lot of the man-made boards. Man-made boards are good, but they usually don't hold up to a liquid. I've just about covered all the materials that you're going to be working with. So next time, we'll start on tools.